In this video series, we'll delve into the biblical timeline of history. We aim to uncover the significance of important historical dates, such as the creation in 11,013 BC, the flood in 4990 BC, and even the date when God would bring judgment upon the house of God, the churches, as mentioned in 1 Peter 4:17. We'll also explore the date of Judgment Day, which is also alluded to in the same verse. And you might be wondering what the biblical timeline of history is and why it's important to learn. These dates weren't placed in the Bible arbitrarily. They serve a purpose beyond mere knowledge. God always has a reason for concealing truths within the Bible. These essential dates are not explicitly stated in verses, but require meticulous exploration through comparing Scripture with Scripture, the biblical method for revealing truth, mathematical analysis, and ultimately guidance from God's Holy Spirit. So what exactly is the biblical timeline of history? It's a timeline that spans across the Bible, beginning with the first book, Genesis. This timeline then extends into subsequent books and chapters. Why should we invest time in learning about the biblical timeline of history? The answer can be found in Ecclesiastes 8:5. Whoso keepeth the commandment shall feel no evil thing, and a wise man's heart discerneth both time and judgment. To comprehend the current time or season, understanding past biblical events is essential to understand when future events will occur that the Bible is prophesied about.
Carl, I can't hear you.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Biblical Timeline of History. This is episode 10, and we're going to do something a little different today. And that is we're going to go over the Keresem doctrines. So we're going to take a pause on the timeline as far as the kings. And this is going to be Keresem proofs that Brian's going to go over. This is going to be part 1. Let me just do something here. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so this is going to be part 1 of Keresem. Here's Brian. And I'm just going to give a quick overview of what, if anyone who's new that's listening, if they don't know what Keresem is. All right, so to get to the time on the website, you go to ebiblefellowship.org. And then on the right side, you'll see this menu. Scroll down and click on Biblical Timeline. This will take you to the timeline page, and the very first episodes that we did, we went over Keresem and what that meant. And essentially, this was the clue that unlocked basically the biblical timeline of history, the calendar, because without this clue phrase, Keresem, we wouldn't have known where exactly to place these patriarchs such as Enos, Canaan. And this is what anyone who's attempted to try to lay out the timeline of history, not understanding Keresem has led to many errors. And as soon as you make one error, then it's just a cascading effect, a domino effect. You just make more and more errors. So understanding Keresem was the key. So with that being said, I'll let Brian take over.
Okay, thank you. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I might ask you to pull up some verses, not quite yet. In the first study, I declared the doctrine of Keresem, which in the King James is translated, called his name. And in Genesis chapters 5 and 11, I explained that when the phrase Keresem, or called his name, was used, then there was an immediate father-son relationship. In cases where that didn't appear, it means that successive patriarch was born the year that the previous patriarch died, and that to be begotten of the previous patriarch means that that first patriarch had a child born the year the succeeding patriarch was begotten, and that son or daughter of the first patriarch could have been the grandfather, it could have been the father, the grandfather, the great grandfather of the next patriarch. We don't know how many generations are between them. But that was when their line was begotten. That's when the first patriarch had a child that was the ancestor of the successive patriarch. And there were two exceptions to that rule. The first was Noah to Shem, and the second was Terah to Abram or Abraham. And we discussed both of these exceptions at length in previous studies. So I'm not going to go through them now. Anyway, there was a movie made in the early 90s called A Few Good Men. And there was this one particular scene where Tom Cruise, who played a defense attorney for two Marines accused of murder, and his co-counsel was trying to get him to implicate the main bad guy of the movie, who was a high-ranking officer. And he didn't want to do it because if he falsely accused a high-ranking officer, he could be court-martialed and dishonorably discharged and all that. And there was a scene, I don't remember the exact phrases he uses, but he said something along the lines of, "Don't tell me what I know the law. It doesn't matter what I know, it only matters what I can prove." So now you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with a Bible study? Well, the simple answer is God created the universe and any other universes. Therefore, God is king and his word is law. Of course, since May 21, 2011, he has the title King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I can believe the doctrine of Keresem. I can say it, I can explain it, but it doesn't matter what I know or what I believe, because the Bible is God's law book. And like this fictional lawyer, it doesn't matter what I know, it only matters what I can prove. So this is the study where I attempt to prove the doctrine of Keresem, whereas before I simply explained what it was and how to apply it. But now I have to prove that it is true. So very often in the Bible, events we see are tied to either the lifespan or reign of a key individual. Examples of this, can you pull up Genesis 7:6?
Sure.
And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. Or if we look at Exodus 7:7, so Noah was 600 when the flood began. And Moses was 80, and a score is 20 years, so fourscore is 80. And Moses was fourscore, and Aaron was 83 years old when they spake unto Pharaoh. So Moses and Aaron were 80 and 83, respectively, when the Exodus happened. Can we look at 2 Chronicles 3:1 and 2? Then Solomon began to build the house of Jehovah at Jerusalem in Mount Moriah, where Jehovah appeared unto David his father, in the place that David had prepared in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And he began to build in the second day of the second month in the 4th year of his reign. So we see here that the building of the temple is tied to the 4th year of Solomon's reign. And one last example, let's look at Esther 2:16. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his royal house in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Now, based on all of these clues, we piece together a biblical timeline of history. Of course, today we keep track of time according to the birth of our final and most important timeline patriarch, which is, of course, the Lord Jesus Christ himself, who never ceased to be the Lord God Almighty. And in Matthew 24, verses 34 and 35, we read, Matthew 24. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. So there was a generation of Adam, there was a generation of Noah, and so forth. But for the last 2 millennia or so, we have been under the generation of our Lord Jesus Christ. Yes, God, for his own purposes, allowed it to be off 7 years, and many people use the term CE, which is for Common Era, rather than AD, which is Anno Domini, which is Latin for in the year of our Lord. Nevertheless, the numbers of our calendar are based on the year that it was thought that Christ was born. Now, there are 193 verses in the Old Testament in which both the word Qara, Strong's H7121, and Shem, Strong's H8034, both appear. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will list a handful of them. Thus far, we have said that when Keresem called his name appears, it indicates an immediate father-son relationship. Now, while this is true in terms of all the lineages given in Genesis 5 and 11, it's not necessarily true in general. So let's look at an example of that is in Genesis 2:19. And out of the ground Jehovah God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call Sem them. And whatsoever Adam called Qara, every living creature, that was the name Sem thereof. So obviously Adam was not the father of the animals, but he did personally name them. Also, let's look at Genesis 3:20. And Adam called Qara, his wife's name, Sem, Eve, because she was the mother of all living. So again, like the animals, Adam was not Eve's father, but he did name her. We also read in Genesis 4:25, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and she called Qara his name, Sem, Seth. For God, said she, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. So Adam and Eve personally named Seth. Now, I'm not personally aware of any cases, either in the Bible or in secular life in general, where somebody other than the parent has named a child. I'm not aware of any cases where a grandparent or aunt and uncle or anybody else named a child. Now, I have a son, and when considering a name for my son, my wife and I did not consult anybody else when choosing a name for him. Now let's look at Genesis 5, verses 1 and 2. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called Qara their name Sem, Adam, in the day when they were created. So God named mankind. And if we could look at Genesis 16, verses 11 and 15. And the angel of Jehovah said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and thou shalt bear a son, and thou shalt call Qara his name Sem Ishmael, because Jehovah hath heard thy affliction. And verse 15, And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called Qara his son's name, Sem, which Hagar bare Ishmael. So God told Hagar what to name their son, and presumably Hagar would have told Abram. And Abram, being an elect child of God, would know that Hagar was telling the truth and would have obeyed God. Now, if you go back to verse 11, it tells us, God tells us, thou shalt call his name Ishmael. So it is still Abraham naming the child, even though it was at God's command. And let's look at Jeremiah 31, verse 10. Hear the word of Jehovah, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, He that scattered Israel will gather him, and keep him, as a shepherd doth his flock. So human beings do declare the word of God. And yes, God also declares his word, and true prophets only declare that which God has revealed. Nevertheless, elect human beings do declare God's word. So I don't think it would be necessarily incorrect to say that God named Ishmael. However, it is also true that his human parents, Abram and Hagar, also named Ishmael. We see a similar situation with Isaac if we look at Genesis 17:19. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call Qara his name Sem, Isaac, and I will establish my covenant. And in Genesis 21:3, we read, And Abraham called Qara the name of his son Sem, that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. We also read, in this case, it's a mother, if we look at Exodus chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. Excuse me, yeah, verses 9 and 10. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called Qara his name Sem, Moses. Moses, and she said, Because I drew him out of the water. So in this case, it is a woman, his adoptive mother, rather than the father naming the child. Nevertheless, she did personally name Moses, and he was her immediate son, albeit an adoptive son rather than a biological son. And if we look at Judges chapter 13, let's start in verse 2. And there was a certain man of Zorah of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and bare not. And the angel of Jehovah appeared unto the woman and said unto her, Behold, now thou art barren and bearest not, but thou shalt conceive and bear a son. Now therefore beware, I pray thee, and drink not wine nor strong drink, and eat not any unclean thing. For lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head. For the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. And we'll skip down to verse 24. And the woman bare a son and called Qara his name Samson. And the child grew, and Jehovah blessed him. So I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but the context clearly dictates that this is an immediate mother-son relationship. And if we read 1 Samuel chapter 1, we'll start in verse 1. Now there was a certain man of Ramoth Zaphthilim of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuppah, an Ephraimite. And he had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And we'll skip down to verse 20. Wherefore it came to pass, when the time was come after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son, and called Qara his name, Samuel, because I have asked him of Jehovah. And again, the context clearly indicates that of an immediate parent-child relationship. And if we look at we look at 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 24, 2 Samuel 12:24. And David comforted Bathsheba his wife, and went in unto her, and lay with her, and she bare a son, and he called Qara his name, Solomon, and Jehovah loved him. So we also see this phrase when God changed Abram's and Sarai's name to Abraham and Sarah. We look at Genesis 17, and let's look at verses 5 and 15. Genesis 17:5. Neither shall thy name, Sem, be called Qara, Abram, but thy name, Sem, shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee. And skip down to verse 15. And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call Qara her name Sem, Sarai, but Sarah shall her name Sem be. And if we look at Nehemiah 9:7, we read, Thou art Jehovah the God who didst choose Abram, and broughtest him forth out of Ur the Chaldees, and gavest him the name Sem of Abraham. And finally, in 1 Chronicles 1:27, we read, Abram, the same is Abraham. That's 1 Chronicles 1:27. Abram, the same is Abraham. And in Esther chapter 2, we read in verses 13 and 14, Then thus came every maiden unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given unto her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women to the custody of Shagahaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines, and she came in unto the king no more, except he delighted in her, and that she were called Qara by name, Sem. So typically Keresem means that you're naming somebody, but in this case, obviously the king did not name her Esther, but he did call on her name. We also have an example of God naming God. For example, in Isaiah 7:14, we read, Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call Qara his name, Shem, Emmanuel. There are also examples of inanimate objects or places being named. For example, in Numbers 21, we read in verses 2 and 3, And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto Jehovah, the fire was quenched, and he called Qara the name Sem of the place Taberah, because the fire of Jehovah burnt among them. Or in Numbers 21:3, we read, And Jehovah hearkened to the voice of Israel, and delivered up the Canaanites, and utterly destroyed them and their cities, and he called Qara the name Sem of the place Hormah. Or in 2 Kings 14:7, we read, he slew of Edom in the valley of Salt 10,000, and took Selah by war, and called Qara the name Sem of it Joktheel unto this day. So we also sometimes read this phrase in connection with God himself. For example, in Genesis 13:4, we read, unto the place of the altar, that's Genesis 13:4, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, and there called unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, and there Abram called Qara on the name Sem of Jehovah. We also read in 1 Chronicles 16:8, 1 Chronicles 16:8, give thanks unto Jehovah, call Qara upon his name, Sem, make known his deeds among the people. So obviously, human beings did not give God his name. But I think it's a situation similar to Ishmael or Isaac, where God told mankind his name, and those men would have then declared that name to others. But there is at least one case where this phrase is used in connection with false gods, that being in 1 Kings 18:25. 1 Kings 18:25. And Elijah said unto the prophets of Baal, choose ye one bullock for yourselves, and dress it, for ye are many, and call Qara on the name Sem of your gods, but put no fire under. And one last thing, we're going to look at the New Testament in Matthew 1, verses 24 and 25. Then Joseph, being raised from sheep, did as the angel of the Lord had bidden him, and took unto him
Brian, you
his wife.
said sheep. I think you meant to say sleep.
Yes, sleep, I'm sorry. Matthew 1, 24 and 25. Then Joseph, being raised from sleep, being raised from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord had bidden him, and took unto him his wife, and he knew her not till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and he called his name Jesus. Now, this is the New Testament, so obviously it's not the Hebrew phrase Keresem, but I do think that the same idea applies. Now, this is far from a comprehensive list, but we can clearly see that the phrase Keresem means to name something, or at the very least, to call upon someone or something. And again, I'm not aware of any examples either in the Bible or in my own personal secular life where somebody other than the immediate parents named a child. And so when we read the phrase Keresem within the confines of Genesis 5 and 11, it's clear that it would have to be an immediate parent-child relationship. So that being said, the next order of business is to prove that the word son or the word begat or begot used does not necessarily prove an immediate father-son relationship. And the most obvious example of this is the very first verse of the New Testament in Matthew 1:1. The book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And the very next verse, it goes on to list the generations, starting with Abraham and ending with Jesus himself in verse 16. But if this is not enough proof, go down to verse 17. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David until the carrying away into Babylon are 14 generations, and the carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are 14 generations. So obviously, if you just look at verses 1 and 17, that in and of itself proves that son or begotten or begat doesn't necessarily mean an immediate father-son relationship. And there are a number of verses where where Christ is referred to as the son of David. And in order to avoid parallel passages, I'm going to stick just to the book of Matthew. In Matthew 9:27, we read, "And when Jesus departed thence, two blind men followed him, crying and saying, Thou son of David, have mercy on us." Or in Matthew 15:22, we read, "And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast, and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil." Or in Matthew chapter 20, verses 30 and 31. "And behold, two blind men sitting by the wayside, when they heard that Jesus passed by, cried out, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou son of David. And the multitude rebuked them, because they should hold their peace. But they cried the more, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou son of David." And in Matthew 29, we read in verse 9, Matthew 29:9, Matthew 21:9 rather. "And the multitudes that went before, that followed, cried, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." And verse 15, "And when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying in the temple, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were sore displeased." So, in general, we can say that to be a son of someone or to be begotten of someone means to be in their lineage. And the only possible exception, if you want to call it that I am aware of, is Moses. And if you go back to Exodus 2:10, we read, "And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses, and she said, Because I drew him out of the water." And this is an adoptive son rather than the biological son. That's the one reason where I'd say it might possibly be an exception. The other reason is Hebrews 11:24, where we read, "By faith," and faith is Christ, "by faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter." So Moses was not a blood descendant of Pharaoh's daughter, but he was in her lineage in as far as she adopted him, even though he later rejected that lineage and killed an Egyptian. One other comparison, I'm going to go through. You know what? Can we go to the biblical timeline? Mr. Camping goes through Peleg, Eber, Reuel, Serug, and Nahor, but I think the way that you do it is so powerful. So if we could just go to Eber, and if you're looking at Genesis 5 and 11, and you just assume where it says begot, that it's an immediate father-son relationship. Now, what you're looking at now is the true timeline. But if Carl hits a button, it'll show you the false timeline if you assume that it's all immediate father-son relationship. So here you can see that under this false timeline, Eber outlives his son Peleg, his grandson Reu, his great-grandson Serug, his great-great-grandson Nahor, his great-great-grandson Terah, and his how many is his? 1, 2, 3.
I think
His
that would have
his
four.
fourth great grandson Abraham, who died at the age of 175. So who do you know who lives out their great grandson? And why does he have this superpower that he gets to live longer than everybody else? So it looks ridiculous on its face. And I did create.
I did want to point out one thing about that now that you brought it up. You'll notice too, if you zoom out just a little bit, with this false timeline, they seem out of place, right? Because Brian mentioned, why is it that Eber gets to live almost twice the lifespan of these individuals? You can almost cut them in half because they're living in their 200s and Eber's living, above 400. And it actually fits with those who lived after the flood. Because, for example, Arphaxad lived 438, Selah lived 433, and Eber 464. So Eber fits into this this part of history where they're living that long. And then something must have happened perhaps in the days of Peleg because their lifespan was almost cut in half again. I say again because the first time they're living to be 900, before the flood, and then after the flood, it almost cut in half. And then it appears that it cut in half again because from Eber to Peleg, now you're starting to see men live to be around 200, 239, 239, 230, Terah, 205, until you get to the time of Abraham. So it really fits with this. It just matches up much more perfectly in that way.
Okay. So let me just do a quick screen share. So you can see my spreadsheet, right?
Yeah, we can see it. Is there a way for you to zoom in just a little bit? If not, it's okay, but
I can make
probably would
it
help.
bigger. View, I'll make it 125%. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So here, this is based off of, this is the Keresem tab of my 7th spreadsheet. And I just went through the math of the numbers where if you assume that Eber is the immediate father of Peleg and Ru is the immediate, if they're all immediate father-son relationships, I just say, if you look at Eber, this is when each of the respective ones were born. And then when Peleg dies, this is how old each of them would be. And when Ru dies, this is how old each of them would be. And this is red because Peleg's already dead when Ru dies. And then when Serug dies, these two numbers are red because Peleg and Ru are dead. But this is how old they would be if they were alive. And then finally, when Eber dies, and you can see that his son, his grandson, and his great grandson, they're all red because this is the age that they would have been were they still alive when he died at the age 464. So this is in there if anybody's interested in that. So I'm going to go through a comparison of Matthew 1 and First Chronicles 3. And if you go to Matthew 1 and you start in verse 2, it'll say it'll go through the generations. You know what? Let's start with David. Can you read Matthew 1 starting in verse 6? So this is Dave, the name, this is the Strong's number, and this is the verse that they appear in. So can you just read Matthew 1 starting in verse 6?
Yeah. Matthew 1 verses 6. And Jesse begat David the king, and David the king begat Solomon of her that had been the wife of Urias.
Just keep reading
Oh.
until you get to Josiah, say.
And Solomon begat Rehoboam, and Rehoboam begat Abiah, and Abiah begat Asa, and Asa begat Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat begat Joram, and Joram begat Ozias. And Ozias begat Jotham, and Jotham begat Achaz, and Achaz begat Ezekias. And Ezekias begat Manassas, and Manassas begat Amon, and Amon begat Josias.
That's enough. And could we go to, and as you can see, there's 3 spaces missing between Joram and Ozias, if you're looking on the screen. And can you read First Chronicles 3, verse 1, and then skip down to verse 5, and then skip down to verse 10?
Okay. First Chronicles 3, verse 1. Now these were the sons of David, which were born unto him in Hebron. The firstborn, Amnon, and Ahinoam, the Jezreelites. The second, Daniel, of Abigail, the Carmelitess. The
Can you skip to
third,
verse 5?
oh yeah. And these were born unto him in Jerusalem, Shimea, and Shobab, and Nathan, and Solomon, 4 of Bathshua, the daughter of Amiel. And
And
verse
then
10.
skip down to verse 10, yeah.
And Solomon's son was Rehoboam, Abiah his son, Asa his son, Jehoshaphat his son.
Verse 11.
Joram his son, Ahaziah his son, Joash his son, Amaziah his son, Azariah his son, Jotham his son, Ahaz his son, Hezekiah his son, Manasseh his son, Amon his son, Josiah his son. And
So
the sons,
that's enough. And as you can see here in the Matthew account, it goes from Joram to Ozias, and then in the First Chronicles 3 account, you have 3 generations in between: Hazahiah, Joash, and Amaziah. Now you can see that a lot of these names are similar, but you might be asking, how can you say that Azariah and Ozias are the same person? Well, if you read 2 Kings 14:21, can you see that on the screen?
yeah, I can see that.
Okay.
And all the, you want me to read it?
Go ahead.
And all the people of Judah took Azariah, which was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. And then 2 Chronicles 26:1. Then all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in the room of his father Amaziah.
And you can see I put the Strong's number in there, so you can tell that Amaziah has the same Strong's number. So clearly, Azariah and Uzziah are the same thing, and you can see where Uzziah, can be similar to Ozias. So here again, you see, these 3 are sons, but God skips 3 generations. So that's another example where just because somebody is called a son or begotten of somebody doesn't necessarily prove an immediate father-son relationship. And there was somebody a couple weeks ago, a couple episodes ago, that pointed out where it was Canaan. The first Canaan was listed, but then there was another Canaan later on that didn't appear in the chronologies of Genesis 5 and 11. Do you remember that, Carl?
Yeah, I do. That's trying to remember
Okay.
what you count.
So at this point, we've proven that when the phrase Keresem is used, it's an immediate father-son relationship. And we've also proved that just because someone is someone's son or begotten of someone, that it's not necessarily an immediate father-son relationship or an immediate parent-child relationship. But we haven't yet proven that when one patriarch dies, that's the year that the next patriarch is born. So,
Well, I'll show visually what he means by that.
okay. So let's go to Genesis 15 and we'll read verses 13 to 16.
Genesis 15:13.
13 to 16.
Okay. And just to point out what Brian means, he means as soon as one patriarch dies, are you talking about like for example, Enos and Canaan? As soon as Enos dies, Canaan takes over, for example.
And when Canaan dies, the
Right.
next one takes over.
This is what you're talking about. Like, how do we prove as soon as Enos dies, Canaan takes over? Is that what you're referring
Yes.
to? Okay.
Yeah. Now, the reason it doesn't happen with Seth Adam to Seth or Seth to Enos is because the phrase Keresem appears in regards to those relationships. I'm not going to read them right now, but they are on the website, and we did go over that in the past.
All right, Genesis 15:13. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years.
Keep reading to verse 16.
And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full.
So God says that they will be in Egypt for 4 generations. And can we look at Exodus 12, 41 and 42?
Exodus 12:41, and it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass that all the host of Jehovah went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto Jehovah for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of Jehovah to be observed of all the children of Israel and their generations.
Okay, so again, so those 4 generations took place over the 430 years. And can we look at Galatians 3:16, chapter 3, verses 16 and 17?
Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not into seeds, as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul that it should make the promise of none effect.
Okay, so again, we see 430 years. Now let's look at the generations of Levi, and I'm going to do a screen share again. And I'm going to scroll down. So here, you can see this, right?
Yeah,
So these are the generations of Levi. And I'm going to have Carl read a couple of passages. And before he reads the passage, I want to point out a couple of things. Observation 1, not once in any of these passages is the phrase Keresem or called his name used. The second is that in none of these passages is there anything that indicates it has to be an immediate father-son relationship. And the third thing I want you to notice, that of all the people listed, there's only 3 men who have their lifespans given. There's Levi, who lives 137 years. There's Kohath, who lives 133 years. And there's Amram, who lives 137 years. And can you read Exodus 46:6 while I keep the screen on here?
Sure.
I'm sorry, Genesis 46:11.
Yeah. All right, Genesis 46:11, and the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari.
All right. And could we read Exodus chapter 6? And let's look at, and if you notice, like whenever the yellow is highlighted, it shows all of the, like Aaron comes from Amram, comes from Kohath, or if you could, Nepheg comes from Izhar, comes from Kohath. So the yellow helps you see who it's referring to. And could you read Exodus 6, verses 16 to 26?
16 through 26.
Exodus chapter 6, verses 16 to 26.
And these are the names of the sons of Levi according to their generations: Gershon and Kohath and Merari. And the years of the life of Levi were 137 years.
And I have 137 right there. That's one of the ones that's listed. Go ahead, continue.
The sons of Gershon, Libni, and Shimi, according to their families. And the sons of Kohath, Amram, Izhar, and Hebron, and Uziel. And the years of the life of Kohath were 133 years.
And here again, these are the, I told you, Levi 137 years, Kohath 133 years, Amram 137 years. And those are the only people whose lifespans are given. Continue.
Let's see, verse 19. And the sons of Merari and Mahaliel and Mushai. These are the families of Levi according to their generations. And Amram took him Jochebed, his father's sister, to wife, and she bare him Aaron and Moses. And the years of the life of Amram were 137 years. And the sons of Izhar, Korah, Napeg, and Zikri, and the sons of Uziel, Mishalah, and
Elizaphan,
and Zithri. And Aaron took him Elisheba, daughter of Aminadab, sister of Nashon, to wife, and she bare him Nadab, and Abihu, and Eleazar, and Ithamar. And the sons of Korah, Aser, and Elkanah.
Wait, say it again. The sons of Korah.
And the sons of Korah, Aser, and Elkanah. Asir, maybe?
Asir, Elkanah, Elizaphath,
Eliasaph. Elkanah. Elkanah would be the third one.
Okay.
And Abiasaph. These are the families of the Korhites. And Eleazar, Aaron's son, took him one of the daughters of Putiel to wife, and she bare him Phinehas. These are the heads of the fathers of the Levites according to their families. These are that Aaron and Moses, to whom Jehovah said, bring out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt according to their armies.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay, and that last verse confirms that this Moses and Aaron are the same Moses and Aaron that we read about in Exodus, because sometimes God gives different people the same names. For example, Tamar was both the daughter-in-law of Levi, who bare him 2 sons, and Tamar was also the name of one of the daughters of David. And can we look at Numbers chapter 3, verses 15 to 22?
3 verses 15. Number the children of Levi after the house of their fathers, by their families, every male from a month old and upward shalt thou number them. And Moses numbered them according to the word of Jehovah as he was commanded. And these were the sons of Levi by their names, Gershon and Kohath and Merari. And these are the names of the sons of Gershon by their families, Libni and
Wait, hold on. Sons of Gershon. Give me a second. Where's Gershon? Okay, go ahead.
And the sons of Kohath by their families, Amram and Izhar, Hebron, and Uziel. And the sons of Merari by their families, Mahali and Mushi. These are the families of the Levites according to the house of their fathers. Of Gershon was the family of the Libanites, and the family of the Shemites. These are the families of the Gershonites. Those that were numbered of them, according to the number of all the males from a month old and upward, even those that were numbered of them were 7,500.
It was right there, 7,500.
Yeah.
And can we read verses 27 and 28?
Same chapter, 27, 28.
Yep.
And of Kohath was the family of the Amorites, and the family of the Izharites, and the family of the Hebronites, and the family of the Uzielites. These are the families of the Kohathites. And the number of all the males from a month old and upward were 8,600, keeping the charge of the sanctuary. The families of the sons of Kohath shall, I think that's it.
Okay. And can we look at same chapter? You just read 27 and 28, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you notice the things are here. So Gershon had 7,500, Kohath 8,600, and you'll see that Merari has 8,600. Could we read verses 33 and 34?
Mm-hmm. Verses 33, Merari was the family of the Mahalites and the family of the Mushites. These are the families of Merari. And those that were numbered of them, according to the number of all the males from a month old and upward, were 6,200.
Okay. And could we read verse 39?
Verse 39, and all that were numbered of the Levites, which Moses and Aaron numbered at the commandment of Jehovah, throughout their families, all the males from a month old and upward were 20 and 2,000.
So one thing that's interesting, if you read this, it says that Gershon had 7,500, Kohath had 8,600, and Merari had 6,200. But if you add them up, you take 7,500 and you add 8,600 and you add 6,200, that gives you 22,300. Whereas God tells us in verse 39 that the descendants of Levi were 22,000, not 22,300. And I'll explain that in a minute, but for now, I just wanted to make note of that.
That
Can
sounds
we?
like a similar issue with Ezra too,
Mhm.
where the genealogies don't quite add up.
So I'll address that in a minute, but can we look at Numbers 26?
Yeah. Well,
And
it's about 9 o'clock, so we can. I'm not sure how much longer you want to go for. I mean, there's no program after this.
do you want to go on, or I mean,
I guess until you get to a stopping point.
okay. Can we read Numbers 26, and we'll look at verses 57 to 60. We'll just read verse 57 first.
And these are they that were numbered of the Levites after their families: of Gershon, the family of the Gershonites; of Kohath, the family of the Kohathites; of Merari, the family of the Merarites.
Okay, and the reason I'm going through this is we're going through all the lineages of Levi, and I wanted to show this so that it shows that we're not leaving anybody out. And could you read verse 58? And in the yellow, it highlights what he's going to read. So go ahead, read verse 58.
These are the families of the Levites: the family of the Libanites, the family of the Hebronites, the family of the Mahalites, the family of the Mushites, the family of the Korathites, and Kohath begat Amram.
So you can see here, these in yellow are all the families that are named, but you can see there's clearly names that are missing. Now, I don't know why God did this. I just found this interesting. I think it's much easier to see visually who's included and who's not. But I just wanted to point that out. If you could read verses 59 and 60.
Yeah. And the name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, whom her mother bare to Levi in Egypt. And she bare unto Amram, Aaron, and Moses, and Miriam their sister. And unto Aaron was born Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar.
Okay. And can we look at First Chronicles 6, verses 1 to 3?
The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And the sons of Kohath, Amram, Ishar, and Hebron, and Uzziel. And the children of Amram, Aaron, and Moses, and Miriam. The sons also of Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar.
And could we read verses 16 to 19?
Okay. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And these be the names of the sons of Gershon, Libni, and Shimei. And the sons of Kohath were Amram, and Izhar, and Hebron, and Uzziel.
And verses 37 and 38.
The sons of Tahath, the sons of Asur, the sons of Abiasaph, the sons of
Wait,
Korah,
sons of, what was the first one?
the sons of Ebiasaph.
By Seth. Where's that? Oh, here. Okay.
But this one has an E, not an A.
Yeah, sometimes the name they spell slightly different sometimes.
Okay. And the son of Korah. That's verse 37.
Okay. In verse 38.
Verse 38, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, the son of Israel.
Okay. So again, it shows that, I'm showing all the generations here. Verses 42 and 43.
The son of Ethan, the son of
Son of
Zimmah,
who?
Ethan.
Where's Ethan? Who's Ethan the son of?
The son of Chaya, Melch, Melchia,
The son of.
Melchia, I think is how you pronounce it. Melchia.
Yeah, I'm trying to do this from memory. All right, go ahead. Continue.
All right, so the son of Ethni, okay, verse 42, the son of Ethan, the son of Zimmah, the son of Shimei.
Oh, here. So start again.
All right, from which verse?
37.
The son of Tahath, the son of Asur, the son of Abiasaph, the son of
I'm
Korah.
I'm sorry. Start from verse. You read 42, right? 42 and 43.
Yeah.
All right, read 42 and 43 again.
The son of Ethan, the son of Zimmah, the son of Shimei, the son of Japheth, the son of Gershom, the son of Levi.
Okay, so here it goes from Shimei, and then there's a couple generations between Shimei and Gershon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my point is that in this passage, there are sons between Shimei and Gershon that are not listed. Verse 47.
Yeah. The son of Mahali, the son of Mushi, the son of Merari, the son of Levi.
Now here it says Mahalai is the son of Mushi, right? Even though in the earlier passages it would appear that these two are brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And verse 50 is the last one.
And these are the sons of Aaron, Eleazar, Eleazar, his son, Phinehas, his son, Abishua, his son.
Okay. So anyway, these are all the descendants of Levi that I was able to find in the Old Testament. And we know that there were 22,000 male descendants 1 month or over at the time of the Exodus. And if you read all of these chronologies, there's nowhere near 22,000 descendants, which means that clearly there are sons that are not listed. And there's no way in 4 generations you could have 22,000. So clearly, just because someone is begotten doesn't mean that it's an immediate father-son relationship. Now, as to the discrepancy between the 22,000 and the 22,300 that these three add up to, what I believe is you'll notice, for example, Libni and Shimei are descendants of both Gershon and Merari. Now, it's possible that they're two different people, but they use the same Strong's number. And if, in fact, this Shimei is the same as this Shimei, and this Libni is the same as this Libni, then
Your screen, you're not showing your screen.
oh,
Your
I'm
video
sorry.
is off. Your video's on.
So here, clearly, if you look at all these descendants, there's no way that you're going to get 22,000 descendants from this. So clearly, there's generations that are missing. But we read through, and we have a Libni, the descendant of Gershon, and we have a Libni, the descendant of Mahali. And we have a Shimei who's a descendant of Merari, and a Shimei, the descendant of Gershon. So what I think is the most likely scenario, I think that Libni and Shimei are descendants of both Gershon and Merari. So, for example, if Merari's son married Gershon's daughter, or vice versa, and then they had a grandchild, Libni, Libni would be the grandchild of both Gershon and Merari. And since son just means that they're of their lineage, Libni and any of his descendants would be descendants of both here and here. And if you simply add these three numbers up, it would be double counting Libni and his descendants. So I think that is the most likely explanation for the discrepancy between the 22,000 and the 22,300.
Yeah, it seems like
So
a very similar issue, or not issue, but thing that we run into with Ezra, right? Nehemiah,
yeah,
where God
so
mentioned, he gives the total count, but then when you actually count it up, it doesn't add up to it.
mhm. So if you look in here, you can see these verses popping up. So any verses that apply to Amram pop up here. Any verses that apply to Izhar apply here, and so on and so forth. So that's what these little red triangles mean. It means that so any verses that apply to that individual person, I put in the notes. So if anyone wants to double check my work, so that's well. Anyway, I guess as far as proving that when one born, the other died. Levi lived to be 137 years old. And if he spent the first 60 years of his life in the promised land in Canaan, that means the last 77 years he would have spent in Egypt. And if you add the 133-year lifespan of Kohath, the 137-year lifespan of Amram, and we already read that Aaron was 83 years old at the time of the Exodus, that adds up to 430 years. And this is assuming that when each patriarch died was the year that the next patriarch was born. And so that's sort of the basis, because God, remember, I pointed out that God only gives the lifespan of Levi, Kohath, and Amram, and we know that Aaron was 83. So God gives us just enough information that we can figure out the 430 years, and then the four generations being Levi, Kohath, Amram, and Aaron. And do you want to show that visually on the screen and the timeline?
Sure.
And that's as good a place to stop as any. So,
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to wrap up. I think one person has a question, and it has to be a question relating to what was gone over on the timeline. I know we didn't really go over the timeline, but it's related to it. All right, which part? Oh, with Kohath and Levi. All right. So here's the 430 years right here. And you remember we worked our way backwards from Aaron when he's 83, Amram, Kohath, and Levi. Did you want to elaborate on that, Brian?
well, like I said, if you take the last 77 years of Levi, bring up the calculator, just 70, because Levi was,
That is 137 minus
but you
70.
subtract a 60 because he was 60 years old when he entered Egypt. You get 77 years. And if you add the 133 no, just take 137 minus 60 and then add 133 for Kohath and add 137 for Amram and then add 83, which is how old Moses was at the time of the Exodus, you get your 430. And so there you see you have four generations adding up to 430 years. And in each case, when Levi died, that was the year that Kohath was born. The year that Kohath died was the year that Amram was born, and the year that Amram died was the year that Aaron was born.
Okay, there's two people who have questions, and then we'll have to wrap up the program.
Okay.
All right. You can go ahead.
Yeah, the question is Levites. I thought I heard Levite had a daughter named Tamar, but Sister Linda pointed out that Levite's daughter-in-law actually should be Judah's daughter-in-law. And I was thinking of Judah having a daughter-in-law named Tamar too.
Yeah, you're right. I'm
So
sorry, I misspoke. You're right. It was, I
what?
believe you're right. It was Judah, whose daughter-in-law. Yes, you're correct.
Okay,
I
not
misspoke.
Levite.
It wasn't Levi. Yeah, I'm sorry. Tamar was the daughter-in-law of Judah, not Levi. I
Okay.
apologize for that.
The other question about Shimei,
Okay.
that's not the same Shimei that cussed David out, right? There was a Shimei that was cussing David, and King Solomon sent the executor to fall on him later on. Is that was not the same Shimei?
It
Right?
may have been the same English word. It may have been the same Strong's number, but I very much doubt it was the same person.
But different generations. Okay.
Because
different
Shimei, at the very least, would have been born by the time of the Exodus. And remember, after the Exodus, there was a 40-year wilderness sojourn, and then you had a 360-year judges period, and then you had 40 years of the reign of Saul until you finally came to King David.
Okay.
So it is very unlikely that this Shimei that we read it would be alive at the time that David is king.
So maybe it was a common name.
Could very well have been. Like I said, there's a number of people that have. I mean, I misspoke. I said that Tamar was the daughter-in-law of Levi, but you're right. It was the daughter-in-law of
Yeah, both of us were
Judah,
thinking.
and Tamar was also the name of one of the daughters of David. Or, for
Yeah.
example, Jeroboam was the name of both the first and the 14th king of Israel, for example.
Yeah, that's way down the genealogy, down the line.
Yeah, so I apologize for misspeaking about that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll get the next question, and then we'll have to wrap up the program. You can go ahead, Candace. Oh, sorry, I muted you by accident.
Can you hear me?
Yep, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so I just have a question on Genesis 4, verse 1 and 2, and then skip down to 25.
All right, you want me to read that? And
Yes.
Adam knew his wife, and she conceived, and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from Jehovah. She again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And then you said skip down to verse 5?
25.
25?
Yes.
All right. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God, she said, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, who Cain slew.
Okay, so my question is this. This is really with the birth of Seth, right? Isn't it the first time the Keresem is used? Why wasn't it? It wasn't used with Cain and Abel, even though they were direct descendants of Adam, right? Did I get that wrong?
Well, no, that's correct, but the thing you asking why they're not patriarchs?
Yeah, because I don't see them. Like it's not, that verse is not used. It's not actually, it doesn't even say how they were even named. I mean, it says that his wife says, I've gotten a man from the Lord, right? But that verse called his name's not even used when it came to Cain and Abel, and I was just curious why when Seth it was. So that was the first time, right? When that verse was used.
Well, it was used before that. For example, God called Adam Keresem all the animals. He named all the
Oh yeah.
animals,
I mean,
and Adam Keresem Eve, and we also read that God Keresem them Adam, meaning both Adam and Eve. So
right.
it's not actually the first, but in terms of an immediate father-son relationship, yes, that is the first case where that is true.
Yeah.
Now, just because the phrase Keresem isn't used doesn't necessarily mean that it's not an immediate parent-child relationship. I'm saying strictly within the guise of the chronologies of Genesis 5 and 11.
Okay. I just thought it was odd that that wouldn't be used in the case of Cain and Abel. You know what I'm saying? That phrase doesn't
So you
come.
looked up the words and Keresem's not used, and it
No.
says he called his name. Let's see.
But I'd also say it's kind of obvious it has to be they have to be immediate
Right.
sons of Adam and Eve because there's nobody else on earth.
Right. I just
Well,
thought it was odd because it just seems like it was such a difference in the way it was worded. No, maybe.
well, God's also highlighting, I think, highlighting the fact that Seth was a patriarch and Cain and Abel aren't. So
Mhm.
even though Cain and Abel were sons, God doesn't give us, and this goes back to who qualifies to be a patriarch.
Right.
We have a list of patriarchs. Why is Seth a patriarch but not Cain and Abel? Well, it's simply because God doesn't give us the birth, the date, the information of their birth year and when they died or how long they lived.
Right. Yeah.
He does do it with Seth, so he's highlighting, okay, since I'm doing this with Seth, that means Seth's a patriarch.
Right. Just sort of curious that it wasn't there how long they lived.
Yeah, and I didn't see where it doesn't say called their names, I don't think, right?
No, it doesn't at all.
It just says that, but yeah, we know based off the context that.
Yeah, and she bare Cain and she bare.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just to be clear, when I say when the phrase Keresem is not used, that when that person died is when the next person was born. I'm speaking only strictly, specifically within the confines of Genesis 5 and Genesis 11.
Okay.
And that's because that's specifically related to the timeline patriarchs of history. So
Okay.
if you're just reading in the Bible in general, if you read the phrase Keresem and it's regarding two people, it has to be an immediate parent-child relationship. But if you do not read that, it does not necessarily mean that it can't be an immediate father-son relationship. I'm only saying strictly because we use those patriarchs to note the timeline of history.
Right.
With other cases, God's not necessarily denoting the whole timeline of history of the whole 9,000 years or however long the timeline patriarchs were.
Okay.
So yeah, the Exodus was in 9566. So so almost 10,000 years follows the timeline of the patriarchs. But in general, like if you said somebody begat somebody, it could be an immediate father-son relationship.
Right.
I'm strictly just talking about within the confines of Genesis 5 and Genesis 11.
Right. Okay, gotcha.
And of course, within the timeline patriarchs during the 430 years of the Exodus as well. We know that.
Okay.
All right, thanks for the questions. And we do have to close out the program just because we went over, but just a reminder to join us next Sunday. We'll probably pick up at the Kings. I think we're on part 4, so we'll do part 5. And then I'm sure at a later time we'll do part 2 and how many more parts there are to the Keresem.
I don't know. Well, it's got about 24 pages and how far did I get?
All right, well, thanks
I
again.
stopped on page 9, so
Okay. Thanks again and have a good night.
okay.
Take care. Bye.